Ready? Welcome to the Centerville City Council meeting. It would have normally been last night, but with election night, and in fact, this facility was used for voting, and we had a nice flow of people right up until 8 o'clock last night for voting. So we're having it tonight. Previous to this meeting, we had a work session that discussed some of the roads within our community and what's coming down the pike there. So we welcome everyone that's here tonight. We will start by having a roll call. Make sure we have a quorum, starting down here on my left with Councilman McEwen.
Present.
Yance, present.
Meekum, present.
Ivy, present.
So that we have 4 of the 5 council members present, with Councilwoman Fillmore granted an excuse of not being here. So we'll start with a prayer of thought, and we will have Councilwoman Ivy.
Thank you. Our Father in heaven, we bow our heads together and thank Thee for the opportunities that we have, the freedoms that we enjoy, and the beautiful area that we live in. We're grateful for the abundance that we enjoy, for the beauties of the fall, and for the good neighbors that we have here in Centerville. We're grateful for our first responders, grateful for the volunteers and all who make Centerville such a wonderful place to live. We pray for Thy Spirit to be upon our city and upon us here this evening. Bless us that we can have peace, that we can have safety, that we can make wise decisions. We love Thee and we thank Thee for Thy blessings upon us, and pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. So next, if you would all join in standing with me and repeating the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now we're at the point of our council meeting where we have an open session, and this is where anyone attending is welcome to come up to either one of these microphones and discuss anything that may be on their mind. It asks that you try and keep your comments to a couple minutes if you're so inclined to come up. And if you do come up, just for the record, just state your name and where you're from. So I will now open that open session for anyone that would like to come to one of these microphones.
Mayor, for clarification, you were going to allow people from the audience to ask questions during the UDOT presentation as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, there is a UDOT presentation, and the audience will be able to ask questions at that point in time, so you wouldn't need to do that right now. Thank you, Councilman McEwen. So any other item that you may want to come forth, you could right now. If nothing, we will close the open session and we will move to the business portion of our meeting. The first thing on our business is the minutes review and acceptance. This is of the October 16th regular meeting minutes, the October 16th work session minutes, and the October 23rd special meeting minutes, and the October 23rd closed meeting minutes. So I welcome any comments from any council members on any of these minutes.
Motion to accept the minutes as posted in the agenda.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Great, we'll move on. Next item on our agenda is the summary action calendar. There's 6 items on the summary action calendar. And so I would welcome any comments on any of those. Otherwise, a motion to approve the summary action calendar.
I just had one question on the refresh on the radios. What's our refresh equipment cycle right now? How often are we trying to refresh the electronics?
Come on up.
Yeah. So Lieutenant Robinson with Centerville.
So what we're doing is these radios that we currently have, we've been contacted by the Utah Communication Authority, and they're just getting out of date as far as the technology goes. And we're told that they could stop working as soon as January. That's just a given date, hit or miss some, but it is possible. So these are some older radios. I don't remember if they're digital or analog, but they're going out of date basically. So we're having to update our radios, which we did budget for, but we're needing to make that purchase in advance of that date so that we're prepared in case they go out before we're ready for it.
Great. And as far as like the continuing cycle, like we do fleet maintenance, what's our plan on our communications gear? I mean, these are being end of life, so what's our thought as far as going forward?
As far as long term, or?
Yeah, just what, I'm assuming we have some schedule associated with it. I'm just trying to understand what it is in terms of, are we talking 3 years, 5 years on equipment refreshes?
You know, I think it depends. I don't know if the chief could weigh in on this a little bit, but I don't know how long these radios will last until the technology outdates them again in the future. Chief, do you have any comment on that?
So about 10 years is what these radios are anticipated to last. They are Motorola, they're pretty durable, they're a good radio. As Lieutenant stated, we've been working off of analog radios, and the system that supports our system, the UCAN system, it's a truncated system. All of the equipment that runs that system is being updated, and it's not going to support the analog anymore after about January or maybe even into June or July. So we have been doing over the last, we probably started about 4 years ago to upgrade our radios to the new compatible radios with digital and the new just compatibility that they need for the new system. And this is going to get us totally, well,
On the vehicle side of things?
on the vehicle side. We still need to purchase some handheld radios, but this purchase should get us up to speed where all of our mobile radios are now compliant with the new system. We're still going to be coming back and asking for approval to purchase some handhelds here in a few months, but that's where it's going on.
Well, 10-year lifespan's really good in anything electronic,
Yeah.
so that's good.
Yeah, and that's where the radios that we currently have been lasting about that long.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant. Any further questions on the other summer action calendar items?
I'm pleased to see item C with the staffing issues at the police department. I'm pleased to see that there's an option to make sure we can get everything staffed and still have people compensated for their vacation.
Thank you. Any further comments before we take a motion? Or questions?
I move we approve the summary action calendar. Do you want me to list off the individual things, or is that enough?
A through F, can we say that, or do we need to read them all?
A through F is fine.
A through
Okay.
F. Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call vote, starting with Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. On to item number 3, this is a presentation and discussion with we have present with us a UDOT representative regarding impact of West Davis Highway in Centerville. Anybody that doesn't know what UDOT is, Utah Department of Transportation. So we're thrilled to have Rex Harris here with us to talk about that. So Jake can help you out there, Mr. Harris, on what you may need, but thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks, Mayor and Council. I'm grateful to be here with you today. And as you mentioned, my name's Rex Harris. I'm the project director for the West Davis Corridor project.
Rex, would you pull that mic down a little bit closer? Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Is it just recording or is it amplified? Amplifies as well.
Yeah.
It's both. Some of us are a little hard of hearing on this side.
I understand. So am I. As I mentioned, my name is Rex Harris. I'm the project director for the West Davis Corridor. Many of you probably were familiar for the last 8 years as we were working on the environmental document. Randy Jeffries, who shepherded the environmental document. Tonight, I just want to kind of tell you where we are, tell you what I know and what I don't know, but when I can tell you when we'll know some things. There's still a few unknowns out there. But just quickly, and I'll be able to try to answer any questions that anybody has. As you know, this time last year, we got a record of decision on our environmental document that gives us clearance. We cleared a right-of-way to move forward with the West Davis Corridor project. We cleared about 19 miles, starting here in Centerville, going all the way up to West Point. That was this time last year that we got that. There was a period of time that there was a statute of limitations that allowed for that document to be sued, a 5-month period, and we kind of sat back and waited to hear what people would do and say. We got through that period of time without any lawsuits, and so we've gotten beyond that statute of limitations, so we're protected on the environmental document. It doesn't mean that we might have any other issues that might crop up, but at least on the document, the environmental document, we're secure with that. We have just recently hired a program manager, a consultant to help us in preliminary design work. And in the next week here, we're starting with a risk workshop to help us start scoping out some of the items so that we can start some preliminary design. I don't know if everybody knows this, but the procurement method that we're going to use on this is a design build. So which means that we will only take the design 15 to 30%. We'll send it out to bid, and contractors will bid that work to do to finish the design and do the construction work as well. We're anticipating that June of 2020 is when we want a notice to proceed for that design builder, so about a year and a half out. And before the end of 2020, we're looking to be into construction. And to complete the project by 2023, we'll be done. So it gives us about two and a half years of construction time to do that work. What I'd like to show you is a little bit about what we know about what type of impacts that we might have for Centerville, and how everybody can look this information up. Oh, I lost my screen, but I'll have to look over my shoulder here.
And we do have a pointer. Did you get the point, Randy? This is our high-tech pointer, Rex.
Hey, all right. I'm just going to back out here one step. So we have on our website, and every actually what I'm going to do. On our website, it's www.utah.gov, sorry. And you can put a / in there and say West Davis. And this brings up this web page. There may be a lot of you that have been able to see this. They had this up and running while they were doing the environmental document. And in fact, we'll keep this updated as we go through the design process. But we have this interactive map that you can click on. It actually will bring up the GIS layers of the design of this project. And as we go through design, we'll keep this updated. So anybody that wants to know where we are in design can come to this site and pull up this map. I'm just going to zoom in here, get some resolution going. As well, there's layers. You can come in here and you can pick different layers. I might just click on wetlands for the fun of it. And this will show all the delineated wetlands that we have in the area. So the impacts that we're going to have for Centerville, just south of Glover's Lane, we'll be building an auxiliary lane, an additional lane that's to the outside. It will fit within the existing right-of-way. And then there'll be ramps that will tie us into where we cross over I-15, just south of Glover's. This is Glover's up here. And the greatest impacts to these homes here, and there's no changes to what we've anticipated that we had through the environmental document. We're not planning on taking any homes, but there are some property clips because to be able to get these ramps to get up over I-15, we have to kick out a little bit, and so we'll be coming a little bit, shifting the frontage road out a little bit, and there'll be, of course, impacts to these homes. We'll be building, as far as we know, we'll be building a noise wall. We've done a preliminary noise study that shows that you qualifies for a noise wall through here. In fact, I say I think because actually, when we cleared the environmental document, the level of design that goes into it is mainly horizontal curvature and all that, but not the vertical, up and down. And as we get closer and we know better about the up and downs, we do the noise studies all over again to make sure that we're building the right height of noise walls and everything. But I believe what will end up happening is that this noise wall will connect to the noise wall that's to the south, the existing noise wall that's to the south. I think there would be a small gap of a couple of 100 feet, but I'm not going to leave a gap like that open. We'll probably close that gap and make sure that noise wall runs continuous all the way up through here. Of course, there's a little bit of design work that has to go with it because it's a pretty tight fit in between where we have I-15 and where the frontage road is. One of the other things that we haven't finalized design on is that when we did the environmental document, we did it based on what the existing configuration, all the lanes that are on I-15. But what we do know that over the course of the next 75 years, usually we design our bridges for a 75-year life, that there'll be some widening to I-15, as well as UTA is planning on an additional track line and all that. So we want to make sure that we build a structure, the structure so that that can handle the combination of those widths. And to be able to accommodate that, we will be shifting everything to the west. So we'll hold solid everything that, as we see here, we're not going to go any further east. We're not going to create any more impacts than what was cleared in the environmental documents to all those homes. And if we do any shifting, we'll shift more to the west, more towards where the Legacy Highway is, which means that there's potential that the Union Pacific Railroad line might shift and the UTA track lines may shift a little bit. But the plan is that we won't create any additional impacts to any of the people that are along this line. The only other thing, a major thing I think with connection is off of Tippett's Lane, as we know that we're going to, because we're crossing West Davis twice, that we're going to cul-de-sac the one road and then come off of Tippett's and connect. And what we have cleared, we tried to avoid the wetlands, as you can see. But there is potential, working with the city, if there's a need to shift and how that works, for potential maybe coming out here and taking a look if we can environmentally clear that. But we'll work with the city about how that connection is going to be.
Are you talking about the connection between what we call the Sheep Road and 650 West in Farmington?
That's correct.
To tie those two roads together?
That's correct.
But 650 West would have an underpass under the, would up to Glover?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
650 West is not, that's not the cattle road. 650 West.
No, I'm talking about, yeah, there's the Sheep Road and there's 650 West. My understanding is Sheep Road is not going to have its own underpass, but will be connected to 650 with that cross road he was showing, right?
Yeah, so this is the road that will continue on from here, from Glover's down underneath with the underpass.
Which is Tippett's.
Tippett's Lane,
And is that 650 West?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then we'll make the connection to tie the two roads together. Other than that, I don't have anything other than if there's questions anybody has. As I mentioned, the hope is that if all goes as well as it has been, we've been purchasing right away as quickly as we can. We've purchased about 50% of all the right-of-way we need on the corridor. Ultimately, we'll spend, and that's about, so far we've spent over $50 million in right-of-way, and so about $100 million worth of right-of-way is what we'll be buying. As part of that, there's the mitigation plan for the wetland impacts. We have direct impacts to about 50 acres of wetland, and our mitigation package is about 1,100 acres that we're purchasing to replace those 50 that we're impacting. As part of that, a lot of that will be along the Great Salt Lake Shoreline Trail. In fact, I can turn on that layer.
What is that, a 20-to-1 ratio? 1,100 to 50?
It ultimately turns out to be somewhere around between 12 and 14%. The ratios are different depending on what you're doing. If you're directly replacing wetland for wetland, or if you're enhancing wetland, or if you're protecting upland and all that, the ratios are all a little bit different, but it works out on average. It's about, I think, close to 14-to-1 is what we're doing.
So can you tell me, going back to the first map you were at, where it's going to start in Centerville? Is it?
The auxiliary lane?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where will be the first impact?
Yeah, okay.
Woods Park, South Park, Woods Park,
Which is about?
Lund Lane. Just about Lund Lane, a little bit south of Lund Lane.
So about right here is where that lane is going to start.
So is that?
Somewhere like Jennings.
I'm not getting very good resolution, but there's Jennings Lane that comes up here. We'll start shifting the lane coming out there, but it'll be all within the existing right-of-way.
But it'll actually start before Jennings.
Yeah, right in that area, right there. Mm-hmm.
So
About mile post 321, so just barely south of Jennings. But the ramps, the big impacts is right up here, just south of Lund Lane is where we actually will be purchasing right away, where the frontage road will be shifted. So you really won't see impacts. You won't necessarily see the impacts. They'll be inside the noise wall.
But will you hear the impact?
You won't see. It'll be on the other side of the noise wall. And of course, you know, anytime you build anything closer, I mean, the noise levels will be a little bit greater.
That's why I wondered where it would start getting closer.
Yeah. Yeah, about Jennings Lane, but the biggest impacts will be about right up by Lund Lane, where you'll really start noticing. That's where we'll be purchasing right away. I saw a hand out here. Sorry.
Yeah, I've got a few questions.
Come on up
You have to be at the microphone.
to the mic.
Otherwise, he'll have to repeat them for the.
And we should mention that we probably need, do we need a name, Lisa? And city of residence.
Yeah, you can just.
Yeah,
give us
I'm
your
Joey Wilson, Centerville, Woods Park area, right on that corner where we're talking. So is the expectation that the current sound wall to the south there will not shift? Will that be moved at all?
Potentially it will. When we get into design, it may have to shift. I don't know the answer to that. I'm hoping not, and I'm hoping, if anything, it's the shift in the connection. When we extend the noise wall down to it, there may be, you know, a little bit of work in there, but I'm not anticipating that noise wall is going to move much, if it is at all.
Okay, it ends about a quarter of a mile from where you're expecting the off-ramp to start cutting into the properties. And when you say it'll be connected, you mean from that point extending south and connecting to where it is now?
That's correct.
Okay. So a question that I asked in the call for comments that was never addressed was, why can't the design be moved about 1 block to the north into the open space that's already there to avoid cutting into either Farmington on that across Lund Lane or the Centerville corner there?
Yeah, we're going to look at that. Part of the issue is it's really to get this curvature and the radiuses. Once we get up here, we have this thing right here that we can't touch, and so.
Which thing? The park there?
The park. It's a protected 4F property.
Is there an engineering level constraint on the curvature?
Yeah, there is. I don't know the exact radius that we had to fit within for the speed there, but I do know they were pushing it right to the max, and so it was really tight. We will continue to look at that, and in fact, oftentimes when we go to a design builder, they'll come back. In fact, when we send it out to bid, there'll be 3 or 4 or 5 design builders that will bid on it, and they'll give us preliminary designs, and they'll look at it. They may actually improve upon our design. If they can improve upon our design and give it to us for cheaper, we'll take that, and that'll be one of the areas they'll look at, because this is really a difficult thing. This structure that will be right here, you can see the skew that it's on, has got a span all the way from here and all the way up through there. It's like 500 or 600 feet, which is a quite large structure and all that. And so to try to make that, we always love to try to be able to cross at a perpendicular.
Sure.
We'll
are you
play
talking about the frontage road curvature though, or the off ramp? Because if the off ramp's vertical and above, you could have less curvature or bring it around a little smoother, and I imagine it relates to the speed limit as well. Can you bring the speed limit down by 5 miles per hour, go from 60 to 50 or something, and take the curvature up?
Yeah, and we'll look at that. Sometimes the problems you get, and there's a few places if you drive down to Salt Lake where they have big chevrons on curves, and they meet a design standard, but for some reason semis always end up not making the curves and all that. And so, that we have to be really sensitive about when we're pushing the limits of curvature.
Okay. When we look at these maps online, how much can we infer that the lines that are drawn as you zoom in are close to final? How much should we infer that if we see a wall going across somebody's yard, that wall's actually going to go?
Yeah, what you can infer from this is that unless we go and reopen the environmental document, which I'm not anticipating on doing that at all. I don't want to make any greater impacts to the people here than we've already done. So this is worst case scenario. So the impacts that we have on that east side, I'm not anticipating that we're going to do anything to make any impacts greater than that.
Okay. Okay, so we'll call it the worst case. On the sound wall, the engineering spec for the sound wall requires a buffer if it were to tip over that it cannot hit a road or cross a lane.
That's correct.
However, in our last meeting here, we had a discussion that, or maybe it was when I was on the phone with you or somebody else, I'd have to look at my notes, made an implication that can be worked around, that's not a hard line engineering specification, that maybe the wall can be built in a different way, or that can just be scratched.
Yeah, the safety issue is real and doesn't go away, but there may be some things that we can do to mitigate that. It may require some additional design work to help protect against, a lot of the times these type of walls, if a semi hit them, they might be toppling over type of a thing. There may be some additional engineering work that we can do to help protect from oncoming traffic to be able to get to that wall. And that's what we'll do. We'll try to mitigate it through protection of that wall.
Would that mean that work would reduce the buffer space in the design?
Yeah.
So instead of needing, say, 30 feet, you could cut it to 10 or something?
That's the hope that we can do that we have an engineer that has to approve of exemptions, and if he feels comfortable that we've mitigated for the safety of that, there's some opportunities for us to reduce that buffer.
Okay, I think that is all my questions. Thanks for your time.
Mm-hmm. Welcome.
Thank you, Joey. Further questions? Just state your name, where you're from.
Hi, I'm Bobby Brinton from Centerville, also Woods Park area. I just had a question about the potential timeline for when you will plan to start construction for this particular phase and how long that's going to take until it's completed?
Until it's constructed?
Yeah.
I can't tell you exactly when the work will be done here. Once we hire the design builder, they'll choose their how they'll do their work. They may start at the north and head south, or vice versa. I don't know. I do know that we do plan to start construction on the corridor before the end of 2020. So I would anticipate, this portion is a portion they have to jump on early because the impacts that we have of the railroad, the structures and all that are all long construction items, and so I'm anticipating they'll be starting on them right away. So I'm guessing the impacts are going to be the end of 2020, the early part of 2021. That's occurring.
All right, that's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you, Bobby. Further? Come on up.
Jake Willis, how you doing, Rex? Same area, Woods Park. Actually, and we discussed this in the last city council meeting. We were just trying to understand if this is the worst case scenario, how accurate that is, because actually, I think, just to be fair to all the other residents that are actually south of that, even starting just north of Centerville Park, the existing overlay on your West Davis Corridor website shows that the expansion lane for the on-ramp actually is on top of the existing sound wall, with the need of the sound wall to actually have to jog to the east, which would affect residents as far south. So to say that it's mostly impacting the residents in Woods Park, I think I guess it depends on perspective, but at the very least, from there, the roads and the wall would, there isn't a wall there now. The roads would shift towards the Woods Park residents anywhere from 16 to 45, 50 feet, whereas down closer to Centerville Park, it's anywhere from 5 to 15 or 20 feet. But there is a definite, based on this overlay, and that's I think why Joey asked the question, is this sort of plus or minus, what's the tolerance on this? Is it a plus or minus 3 feet? Is it pretty much based on the engineering design that's gone into it, pretty close to accurate plus or minus a foot or two?
It should be fairly close. Now, as I mentioned, our hope is that we do know that we're going to have to shift to the west because of the additional lanes that will be added the other way. And if we're going to be shifting to the west, the hope is that when we're down there where the southern end where the noise wall is and the auxiliary lane, all that will shift out as well. And so the hope is I'm trying to push everything as far away as I possibly can.
For sure. I just want to get an accurate understanding of what the real impact is, because I think we see that. And there was just a recent a bike lane, a nice bike lane that was added to frontage, and based on this map, if we zoom in,
that'll all be impacted.
Everything will be shifted. Walls will have to be shifted at the very least 1 foot to several feet. Just making sure that's an accurate understanding from the resident standpoint, not just Woods Park, but all basically north of the Centerville
I think it's
Park.
accurate to say that at the most down at the southern end, we're going to be shifting a little bit. I'm hoping that we'll minimize that as much as we can.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Rex.
And a follow-up to that is really, as we've been talking about as a council, now that we have the bike lane in and we've got some water piped under the road now, we really like to start looking at beautification and landscaping and what that looks like. So when can we actually survey that area? It sounds like after the design build phase closes, as far as when you get your bidder, is that when that basically, when can we actually say this, if we put a tree here, we don't have to, it's not going to be impacted, we don't have to move it?
Yeah, so what's going to happen, we just barely started this preliminary design phase, and probably through the first of, towards the end of spring, the first part of summer, we'll have a really good idea of what we're going to be sending out as a package to a design builder, and we'll be working with the cities through agreements and all those type of things. If anything changes with the design builder, it'll be up to them to clear everything environmentally, if there's any impacts. And like I said, the impacts have to be less than what the existing ones are. And so I'm not anticipating that they'll come up with some harebrained idea that would make things better down there than what we'll come up with, but you never know. But I think probably by June-ish, we'll know pretty well what the exact impacts will be there.
Okay.
So Rex, I think one thing we need to clarify, they own the entire frontage road. The frontage road is in their name. We have a right to use the frontage road. So any of the frontage road they want to use or change,
They own it. So from
Yeah.
a standpoint of,
It's not that I'm trying to do a property taking. I'm looking at it in terms of, well, if we as a city want to invest in beautifying the corridor, I just don't want to rip out an improvement that citizens
Right.
help pay for.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to get, if this is the line, I just don't want to rip trees out because I'd really like to get
but
that
even
going.
into the future, anytime they can utilize
Oh, sure,
the
sure.
right of way. And I don't think people
But-
understand that that
No.
is owned by them.
But if we know this is coming up in 2020, we don't want to put beautification in there in
Absolutely.
the middle of 2019, so.
Sure.
Right, and then they say, sorry, we need to really go over a couple of feet. But because that's something we definitely want to do. And our goal is to not have a real transition between Farmington and Centerville anymore as far as the beautification goes. So that's something we want to participate in, but sounds like the end of summer before we get
Sure, and during
pretty
that time,
solid.
we'll be coming to you between now and then to talk about any type of betterments that you might be looking into. You know, if you want to upgrade water lines and all those type of things, we'll talk about that so that we can do all that construction at one time.
And that wall could be moved as well because they own, so if they want to curve it sooner. So I just think we need to recognize
Sure.
their ownership, but
Yeah, but not in dispute at all. It's more along the lines of when we get to talking about betterments and what the city can participate in, is anything we can do to soften the impact for those impacted directly based on this. So just for clarity on the maps, your dotted green line, your dashed green line, that is the end of the right of way when you zoom up on any of the areas?
I believe so.
So is this going to affect the new frontage road at all? I mean,
Yep.
The north end.
Yeah.
So,
It starts about Jennings Lane, so we got Jennings Lane to Lund Lane of what we've done that it's gonna
that
affect.
they're going to redo.
Uh-huh.
So will you be moving at the frontage road?
The frontage road won't be moving that far south. The frontage road doesn't move until you get up to Lund Lane.
But at Lund Lane, then the frontage road is going to.
We'll shift a little bit.
So just very little on that north end within the city. Lund Lane is the city limit, by the way, for Centerville. And that's why they're focusing on Lund Lane. So-
We like Farmington too, but
Yeah.
we're just talking about our
Glad
boundaries.
you said it first.
But I think what you're saying is that as far as encroaching on the frontage road and requiring the frontage road to be
move.
shifted, that doesn't occur until you're almost to Lund Lane.
That's correct.
Okay. I don't know what almost means, but
just a brief question, Joey Wilson again. Did Centerville residents pay anything for the renovate or the new pavement or the new bike lane on the frontage road? Was that out of Centerville residents' taxpayer dollars, or was that federally funded?
the bike lane project was 93 point something percent federal money and 6.77% local money,
Local as in city money?
as in city money, yeah.
And how much
then
did
we-
that total, that 6% of city funds?
For the whole length, about 70,000.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I wanted.
And of course, any impacts that is created by that project, you know, will all be replaced or made whole.
So one of the questions that I at least have, and I think this kind of dovetails with what the residents are concerned about, is the concept that once the genie's out of the bottle, how do you get it back? And if we're sitting here with some preliminary things that are 30% designed approximately, and we have placed a beginning of the impact at Jennings Lane, is there any incentive to the people doing the design and build to minimize that impact on the properties in question?
The incentive for me is that I want to be a good neighbor, and we do everything we can to limit the impacts as we can. I mean, we have to meet safety standards and all that. And you know, what we have showing here is what we have cleared environmentally. We've cleared that, and we can utilize these, as you say, we can utilize that. We could just try to maximize and make the impact as great as we can within that area, but that's not our intent. We want to try to make sure that you know, we reduce the impacts as much as we can.
And for illustration, could you move that up so we go further south at that scale? to down to Lund Lane? There we go, in that area. Okay. That's the area particularly. Maybe a little further, shift it just a little more, Rex. Okay, there you go.
So, yeah, so
So that's where you,
2200 north is kind of about where we're kind of showing. And that, as you said, this is kind of a,
maximum.
not 100%. I mean, it's, slapped on over top of it. There might be, a couple of feet variances, whatever, but fairly close.
So,
And that's basically the worst, sorry.
Yeah, if you would.
That's the worst case scenario, just to
Yeah.
confirm what you said before.
Yeah,
They probably heard me.
anything other than that, we have to reopen the environmental document and go through the whole process again. And we're not planning on doing that.
question?
So one of the comments you made early on was that you've got I think you said a 600-foot span across the top of the freeway.
Yeah.
Does that imply that there is no support in the center of the freeway or between the freeway and Legacy as you're going over the top of the two?
There is, yeah, I can't clear span, unless I had a suspension bridge, I couldn't clear span that far.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so there'll be, and I don't know how many, there'll be at least one in the middle. And that makes it really critical for me to know what those future lane configurations that we're adding, because I don't want to put a footing right where our lane's going to be. And so we're working with the railroad right now to figure out if we had to shift the railroad, what that design is going to be, and that's not an easy thing. To shift a curve in a railroad, it's not like on a road. It takes like it'll take us a mile or more to start a curve, and they can't have vertical curves in the same places where they have horizontal curves. So they got to do a horizontal curve, then a vertical curve, and it really lengthens out. So it's really, really expensive. So, but if that's what has to happen, we may have to shift them. But in the next couple of months, we're going to really determine what's going to happen there, so we know where those footings are going to be, so we know how to tweak those structure and bridges, and so we know how to minimize the impacts that are on the east side the best we can.
Okay, last question, or one last question. You commented early on, well, you just commented a minute ago about the environmental document and not changing it up anymore. You spent that money, you don't want to spend it again. You've been the 5 months, haven't been sued, so you're okay. We went through a nightmare with Legacy 10, 12 years ago because of lawsuits and former mayor and so forth in Salt Lake. I haven't heard anything this time. Are you sure that you're not going to have something come out of the woodwork?
Not on the environmental. They can't sue us on the environmental document. In fact, because of what happened on Legacy, the legislature made some changes that created this statute of limitations. At the time that we were sued there, they waited until we got to construction before they filed the lawsuit, which was the worst possible time for us because we had a contractor out there working, and the impacts it created to them. We were paying $1 million a day to put the contractor on hold. We ended up canceling that contract and had to rebid it again. And ultimately, yeah, it cost the state about $400 million and that whole thing. And so since that time, they made it so that there's that statute of limitations. And so you got that. It was a 5-month window. You can sue within that 5-month window. Outside of that, then they can't sue the environmental document. Now, we could get sued on other things. We could get sued on the 404, the wetland permit, or we could get, which we generally don't see have happen, but there's other things that people could sue on. But the environmental document itself, which is usually the big dog that if it's going to be challenged, that's what's get challenged. And we got past that. We didn't hear any rumblings, which is a good sign. It either means that they felt like that we've gone through the process well. It doesn't mean that everybody's happy. Obviously, there's impacts. There are impacts to residents and all that. But we follow the process, and as from what we've heard, then they felt the feeling is that we've cleared that hurdle.
Okay.
Question?
Thank you.
Could I ask one more question? I know.
Come on, we're just asking you to come up so we catch you on YouTube.
Yeah.
That's why you come up.
Somebody will be at home going, well, what was the question?
Yeah.
on our 3-person viewership.
So speaking somewhat representative of our neighborhood in Woods Park there, I think our primary concern is that sound wall. Could you give us any kind of likelihood on, kind of being appeased now and then at the end saying, we don't have that buffer space for the sound wall, it's not going in? I think that's our primary concern, and I speak for a lot of us. That sound wall is critical to the noise in that neighborhood. That's our primary concern. Can you give us any kind of assurances or even a probability of some kind on how likely that sound wall is?
My guess would be it would have to be some very, very compelling reason why we couldn't do it. I'm anticipating that will happen. And from my standpoint, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure it happens.
Okay. All right.
Remember,
Appreciate
he's
that.
on YouTube, so you've got it.
It's on YouTube.
Mayor, I've got a related question.
Sure, Steve, go ahead.
Regarding the grade of the elevation of that beginning of that on-ramp, if you will, at Lund Lane, the surface of the road. Do you have any idea what that is? Is that elevated 2, 5, 10 feet above Lund Lane?
I couldn't tell you at this time. We haven't done any of that work, but obviously the early stages of that coming off is
A few feet?
maybe a couple feet.
Okay.
So Rex, you said that Farmington Park cannot be touched. That's off
It's very,
ground.
very difficult to impact that.
Are all parks like that? Like if you were coming further south, would our community park be the same way?
Generally, most parks fall under that, yeah. And it has protective status. And then if there's, and it even has more protective status if there are federal dollars used in the building of that, and it even becomes even more difficult. Yeah.
I'm just committing you to not come down to our community park, so.
Now, and as you've heard with what went on in Farmington, we did impact a park that we had to replace. And so it's not unreasonable that if there's no other alternative or the alternatives are much more impactful, then we can impact parks. And so as part of that, in Farmington, we're spending, it was announced $4.75 million to purchase property for Farmington to buy land and to replace a park that we're impacting. So.
Right. Yeah, I remember that one. Okay. Any further questions? It sounds like a couple of.
Would you 3 mind showing us which houses you're on? We're trying to see how much impact this is really. Sorry, I know that's.
Jake's house is this one, and my house is this one.
But Rick's also here.
Rick is right here, and Bobby's right here, and
And I'm here too.
oh, parishes are right here. So right in here.
That
is where we're
west
talking, yeah.
curve.
So you're not losing any of your property, it's just coming closer to you.
Exactly, and that was what we were trying to emphasize, is this is all moving closer by quite a bit. We're not talking 2 feet, and that is north of Centerville. That's why I was trying to emphasize that it's not just us that's being impacted. There are a lot of residents between Centerville Park and us that.
And your biggest concern is the sound wall.
It's loud now, it will be however many decibels louder with, being 45 feet closer, plus the 2 lanes on the exit ramp.
Okay.
And if the sound wall doesn't go in now, it's never going in. Because
Correct.
it has to be during this project that we take advantage of this opportunity to get it put in on there. And we kind of feel like that's worst case scenario and we get a wall. I would say that's great. That's a great outcome for us. It doesn't look like it's slicing too much, especially if we get that sound buffer.
So it sounds like, Rex, that our next major milestone from a city standpoint is the discussion of betterments next summer.
Yeah, between now and the first part of summer, you'll be seeing us.
Okay.
coming by.
Because Mayor, I would suggest that I'm not fond of forming extra committees, but I would definitely love to have some representation from somebody in that directly affected area in that betterments discussion and in the work sessions.
At some point in time, we'll probably be sending you a letter saying by this date, we need to know what the betterments are going to be. And so we're anticipating sending what's called the request for proposals out to the bidders by the end of December next year. And so all that information should go into that package unless we do a mod later on, and that gets really, really expensive. So it's going to be within this next year that we're going to want to solidify all
Right,
that.
and I'm not trying to pin you down to a date in the summer necessarily. I'm just trying to give the residents an idea of when's the next time that they need to be as concerned and engaged. I mean, don't get disengaged, but the next time they have to really pay attention to the project from that standpoint. So you're thinking we'll be talking betterments in the summer time frame?
And we'll be reaching out to these folks as well once we know what those impacts are going to be. We're going to go back out there and reach out to them and say, hey, this is what it's going to look like. This is what you're going to see. And if you have any additional comments or help with it, whatever. And that's probably going to be within the next probably 4 months or so.
Okay.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being aware of what's going on. I mean, this whole room should be full of people, and it's not, which always frustrates me because I was you for a long time. And I appreciate you taking the time and staying engaged to the very end. And I hope that you're getting the message from our residents that the sound wall is extremely important, and we don't want to run out of money right towards the very end and not have that. So,
Rex, we want to thank you.
Understand.
We want to thank you for taking your time, coming to present. We want to thank Jake and Joey and all the neighbors that came as well too. Jake and Joey kind of started this off a few months ago by sending us an email, and we had a council meeting where we just kind of discussed what was going on. We love that. We love that you're engaged, involved, and I don't have any concerns that you can stay engaged. So thank you so much. And
I want to make sure that I feel like that I'm your advocates as well. And I'm trying to make the best of this situation for you. So.
We appreciate it, Rex.
Great, thank you. Any last minute questions for Rex? It's an important issue. Thank you, Rex. We appreciate it so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Great, we'll move on then to item number 4. This is considering the agreement for the architectural engineering services regarding Island View Park renovation project. And before we start into this, I need to acknowledge that one of our council members, Councilwoman Ivy, has a conflict of interest. Is that what we call it?
A disclosure that she would like to make.
A disclosure she'd like to make, and she's put that in writing, and I guess you disclose verbally as well too.
I will. I own property next door to the park. Thank you so much. On the southwest corner, and I know all of you have probably been by my house several times and are aware of that, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that I do own property next to the park, and I feel like I can still be objective. That doesn't color me too much to be objective in this discussion. I hope you agree.
And she signed a document as such, and I verified, witnessed that, and returned it back to our city attorney. So with that disclosure, we will go into this agreement. Steve, are you going to lead us on that?
I'll lead out. Lisa will join in here shortly. We've been running pretty fast to try and get this ready for tonight because the timeline is critical. We get this out to bid as soon as we can next spring. And so I want to commend Lisa especially. I want to acknowledge that Lisa was supposed to be gone this week on vacation, and she postponed that. She's leaving late in order to focus on this and get this before you tonight, this agreement. Bruce and I focused on took the lead in the fee negotiations. Lisa took the lead on the drafting of the agreement. I think we'll begin with the fee negotiation. That's probably uppermost in your mind. Then Lisa can do the boring stuff. We invited G. Brown to, the name of the firm for those listening in the audience is G. Brown Design. That was the unanimous first choice of the council in the recent interviews of 4 firms. So we were directed as staff to begin the negotiations with G. Brown Design. We invited them to submit a proposal, a scope of work, and a proposed fee schedule for that. I will explain what they submitted to us and then where we got to eventually and why we think that's reasonable. Jake, would you pull up the DFCM fee guidelines? Okay. When they submitted their proposed fees, they made reference to the same fee schedule from the Division of Facilities Construction and Management that we have been referring to. If you go to the table, the first table is the architectural table right there. They considered this to be of average complexity, at least generally speaking. And then if you go down another page, that was 7 point, go ahead, Jake, keep going, right there. You see they highlighted it. This is the version they gave us that they highlighted. 7.74% it was the guideline. And then if you go down to the next page, which is engineering, because part of this is engineering, and they also characterize that as average complexity. If you go to the next page, Jake, that percentage is 7.3%. And so they proposed something in between the two of those, 7.5%. But they also then ask for 0.75% on top of that, based on the green highlighted line on the 2 tables, which shows for renovations. We did not agree with that. We asked them to leave that out. Actually, let me back up. We received their proposal. We forwarded it to 2 individuals whose opinion we thought would be very useful. One was the fellow at the state, DFCM, that we had talked to before. And we also forwarded it to John Ruitis of our Parks Committee, who is a project manager for the Salt Lake County Parks Department and has a lot of experience with landscape architects for their projects. The fellow from the state was the more conservative of the 2 in their feedback, but he actually was a little more generous, I guess you would say, in his characterization than he did the first time around. You might remember the first time around he said this wouldn't be any more than that level just below average, which was showing 7.2%. But this time around, he said 7 to 7.5% was reasonable in his mind, but not adding on the 0.75%. That's not the intent of that. Mr. Ruitis, how do you say his name, Bruce? Ruitis. Felt like their proposal was reasonable, even with the additional add-on there. But we have, so we pushed back on this and countered with leaving the 0.75% off. They pushed against that initially and just argued that, well, even though we characterize this as average complexity, there are some aspects of it that we think are above average, such as the slopes of the site, for example. And instead of trying to itemize what those complexities were or are and what kind of fee add-on we should have for that, we just decided it'd be simpler to add on that 0.75%. Well, bottom line, we said, no, we would like you to take that off. There was discussion about the additional services or other services that are not typically included in that base fee. And we ultimately agreed that the geotechnical surveys, the geotechnical work and the site survey are other services above and beyond that. And Jake, if you'll go to is this the engineering one? No, oh, you need to stay in that same document. Okay, is that the engineering table there? Yeah, keep rolling right there. Okay. You notice the footnote there says, I can't read it from here, but it says, yeah, so these are examples of additional services that are not included in the complexity of schedules A through C. This is the engineering, referring to the engineering table. And so there's geotechnical and site survey. And John Ruitis agreed that those are normally outside the basic service fee at 7.5%, for example. So we asked G. Brown to get a proposal for the site survey from his engineer partner of the team, engineer member of the team, which is Ensign Engineering. And before we received that, I asked ESI to give us a proposal for that. And as it ends up, the ESI proposal is about $1,000 cheaper, and they could get started right away. So I've actually authorized them to already start that this week, the site survey. They've got did they start out there today? Do you know, Bruce?
Yes.
Well, you started marking them. Did they start? Oh, they also started yesterday. Okay. So they can get that done and to the designers by next week. That's $4,800. Again, about $1,000 cheaper than what and G. Brown was fine with that, no problem. Regarding the geotechnical, they obtained 3 proposals for that, ranging from $4,500 approximately to $8,000 or $9,000, as I recall. And we did ultimately agree on the low proposal there, so that would be the cost of the geotechnical work as add-ons. Now, one of the things they also had in their scope of work, which you requested, was public involvement. And that is also viewed as, at least by Mr. Ruitis, who has a lot of public involvement with their projects in Salt Lake County parks, views that as an other service beyond the basic fees. They initially proposed $3,800 for conducting an open house, preparing the boards, conducting the open house, advertising it, keeping record of the comments made, compiling the record, the comments, and meeting with staff to discuss what changes that might suggest out of that. I countered and said, what if you revise your proposal to just represent those things that we want you to do? In other words, we as the city staff can do the advertising, the record keeping, the compiling of the comments, and so forth. And so they came back with cutting it almost in half to $1,950 from the 3,800s. And so we would recommend that that be a third other service, if you will, on top of the basic fee. So you've got the basic fee of 7.5%. Times the construction budget of $1,020,000. You'll recall we left out the contingency and the professional fees and the state administrative charge, being left with a basic construction budget of $1,020,000. So when you apply 7.5% times that, it's $76,500, I believe. And that's a fixed number we've agreed upon for the basic services. I mean, ultimately, I'm quite sure we're going to spend the contingency, construction contingency, but that would not affect their fee. So we're going to fix the fee. And then we add on to that the $4,800. Well, we actually contract the $4,800 for the site survey, the city does. And then add on to their fees the $44,510, Lisa, help me out here, for the geotechnical.
Yeah,
And then-
4,510,
And then $1,950 for,
1,980.
$1,980 for their help with the public open house. So that's how we got to the fees, and I feel good about that. I think that's fair. We recommend that to you. That's been built into the agreement.
And if you'd like to see that in detail, I did add to the packet today 2 items. The last 2 items, the last one says revised scope of work and project schedule, and it has all those fees detailed in that.
We'll put that up on the screen there.
Okay,
Go
yep.
towards it's towards the end, isn't it?
Mhm.
Towards the end of the dock.
There
Right
you go.
there. Any questions about that? Okay. Then, Lisa, you want to talk about the agreement?
Sure. So we put the agreement in the packet on Friday without the ideal opportunity to have the architect firm look at it. So we were looking at it internally as well as letting them look at it. But we went over it in detail with them this week, and they just had a few changes that I think we all agreed to. And so that's the red line changes. And mainly the changes since the version in your packet is that we are now adding the very specific project schedule. And basically they've just added that as an exhibit to their scope of work, that this is the schedule, and it's a more detailed schedule than what was in their proposal. And we've added the explanation of the fees, that it's going to be a 7.5% basic service fee, and then these other services in the scope of work. It currently says optional, but later Matthew said, let's put other services, so we've included that in the other services. And we took out one word called commercially reasonable. And then he also explained that he's the president of the Architects Incorporated and then the managing principal of the DBA, so we've just changed the signature line. So those are the changes from what was in your packet. Just wanted to highlight those. But explaining the contract in general, we wanted to make sure that we were complying with the terms of our Land and Water Conservation Fund contract with the state, and I figured the best way to do that is to attach that agreement to this agreement and say you have to comply with this. And then to be extra sure, I said, but I want to highlight some things that I really think you're going to need to take care of, and those are on page 3, which are basically saying you need to meet the minimum elements, you need to follow the procurement policies, and then some other additional federal requirements. So I think they're satisfied with this agreement. It's acceptable to them. And I do want to, thank Bruce and Steve for their efforts as well as G. Brown. They've put out a ton of work in a week and have had conference calls late in the day out on the field. So I've been really impressed with the way they've responded already, and they've revised their insurance certificate and all of that. So they've been good to work with, at least as far as the contract negotiation.
Thank you, Lisa. So do we have questions for Steve or Lisa or Bruce? Bruce is our Parks and Rec Director, here with us as well too, or discussion on this at all from the council?
Well, if we pull up the proposed project schedule, page 7 of that document, looks like we have the site inventory, according to their schedule, task 1, task 2 is kicking off next week. And Steve, you've already started the site piece. This is a pretty tight schedule. I mean, I like it. It's a tight schedule. From a contractual standpoint, I don't know that there's any reason why they couldn't keep to the schedule, but it does, as you indicated in your email, it looks like we need to be on this tonight as far as the decision and agreement with the fee structure.
Yes, I highly recommend that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had recommended that we hold off until November 20th, but in talking with management and the architect firm, it really would push the project back. More so than just those 2 weeks, because then they would miss some certain deadlines and then you'd be in the winter. And anyway, it definitely pushed the project back. So we think it's worth getting it on tonight, and hopefully you'll approve it.
So we have discussion on the fee schedule. Questions on that?
My first initial reactions to it is I think it's reasonable. I'm not in disagreement with them that the site survey / complexity of the geotechnical are required. I was wondering when we had the initial presentations how they were going to slide that all in under the same schedule. I hadn't noticed the bullet point at that point in our discussions when we talked about it before. But I really don't have a lot of heartburn with the fee structure. I think it's reasonable and it's capped. And considering the size of the project and the product we're hoping to get, I don't really have any heartburn at all with approving it.
Stephanie had a question, Mayor, about the schedule.
I know there's been considerable stir in the neighborhood about that, and that's why I was so pleased to see the public involvement. How definite is that? There, the little public open house note there on the 14th. Is that a hard and
That's
fast?
the week of the 14th. Is what
that a hard and fast
date?
date that
No.
we can try to put out there already, so people can
Well, I
prepare
wouldn't,
around that?
no, I
or-
wouldn't put that out there yet, because actually, we've talked to them about, could we move that up a week, like to have it on the Tuesday, the 8th of January, advertise it in our utility bill insert at the end of December. And that just gives us another, maybe lets us come a week sooner on the other end on bidding.
Okay.
Everything we can do to do that, but obviously the holiday is in there, and we can't do any better than maybe the 8th of January.
I just know that usually runs into the local church's meeting for the women that night on the 14th-ish. So the
Yeah,
sooner we can let
And
the
I think the
neighborhood
14th
know
is
in
a
advance.
Monday, I think. So that represents the beginning of the week, those
Okay.
dates there. So yeah, we can pin that down in the coming weeks and get your okay on that.
So it'll probably be a 7-10 day window in there, you think, Steve?
You mean
For the open house?
for advertising, you mean?
No, but when the open house would be,
Oh, we got a few days flexibility, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so it gives us an idea, be
Yeah.
able to tell people.
yeah, first half of January.
Okay.
And it would probably be even worth a separate discussion is, this is the task, but there's scope inside the task. So if we're talking about the public involvement, I think as the council, we need to give further instruction as to what we're expecting out of that process so they know even what to prepare. So I think we have
Yeah.
to be flexible on the date.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, they are assuming an open house. Is that okay with, that's what you envisioned? And then also some online advertising and so forth, online opportunities for them to view the conceptual at that point.
So without further discussion then, do I have a motion to entertain this agreement?
I'll motion to direct staff to execute the agreement as specified and to agree to the schedule as it has been lined out and to agree to the project fees as discussed.
And it would actually be the mayor executing it, I think. Wouldn't it be, Lisa? The mayor?
Yeah, but he's
Participate
directing
in
us to get him to
Yeah,
sign it.
yep, okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do you have further discussion, or can I do a roll call vote, starting with Councilwoman Ivy?
Aye.
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 Motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
I would like to thank our staff. I think you did an excellent
Amazing.
job on
It's been-
all of that. I am really impressed with it and with you. So thank you very much for getting us the best deal we could get.
Thank you. That means a lot, because we've been
Pretty shocking to
working
get it
hard.
turned around that
Right.
fast.
You
That's
guys,
really amazing.
it's amazing what you've done in that amount of time, and you do deserve some great kudos for that. Thank you.
Definitely echo that. I mean, there was a lot of upheaval when we decided that we needed to follow this process, and the staff was fantastic in reacting to that.
Yeah.
Lisa, you shouldn't have you should have gone on vacation. But no, I think all of us appreciate it, and we're looking forward to just a superior product. It'll be a great park when they're done.
Thank
It's
you.
not only just the last 2 weeks since it was approved, but all the time leading up to that too. Getting the candidates to interview that in such a quick fashion as well too.
Well, and of course, we can't let it go and miss that we've had a fantastic Parks and Rec committee that have put us to this point where we can actually make this decision.
And allowed us to have the funding, and yep, it's really been amazing.
So you
Everybody
should have
pulling
invited
together.
them all tonight, Bruce. Okay,
Have them
good.
be sure and watch
Be sure to-
YouTube. We really
Pass that
appreciate
along,
them.
pass that along to them.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's go to, excuse me, frog in my throat. Let's go to item number 5. This is consider proposed fleet replacement plan for Public Works Department. I think we have Randy Randall and Mark Marchant here to tell us about that. You two want to come up?
Uh-oh, they're tag teaming us. We're in trouble.
That's right, we're surround you.
But I noticed neither one of you is in a tie, so I'm not feeling as threatened.
Actually, we're not asking for any money tonight, we're just asking for permission
Just not
to think about buying some money. Actually, we're trying to get some free money. We're gonna get $500,000, close to $500,000 of free money, hopefully.
We hope, yeah. Which one of these do you want up there, Randy? Which, you want the memo, or do you want the
Why don't we-
replacement plan? The-
I don't know which one you wanna start with.
Let's start with the memo. Who knows about the VW grant program? Okay, then we can probably start
Yeah,
with.
go ahead and talk about it, Mark. Tell them what.
So what it is VW has allocated $35 million to the state of Utah for emissions on vehicles to swap out old vehicles that put out a lot of carbon monoxide into the air. So the cities, don't mind me, I'm not nervous at all, okay?
You're only on YouTube, it's here forever, no pressure.
But, so cities are allowed to put in an application for up to 50% funding towards a vehicle to replace an older vehicle in your fleet. And so what we're wanting to do is come to you and ask you for a multi-year commitment in order to make the VW program work in our favor. So let's start with the first chart that shows the $200,000 a year commitment. So let's start here. We'll start right here. This here is an outline of how the funding would lay out over the next 4 years with the VW grant. In the fiscal year 2020, we're asking the city to fund $200,000 for vehicle replacements. With the Volkswagen grant, we would be eligible for up to $180,000 in funding for equipment. And that year, we would like to purchase 2 bobtails with plow equipment at $180,000 each.
Those would be replacements.
Those would be replacement vehicles for older vehicles in our fleet that meet the criteria in the application. And so our total expendable for that year would be $360,000. And we would have a rollover of $20,000 that would roll over into 2021. In 2021, we're asking for the same thing, a $200,000 commitment from the council. And the Volkswagen grant, we would be eligible for up to $96,300. We're only looking to replace 1 vehicle that year. With that, for that year, we would be replacing 1 bobtail with plow equipment, and we would also like to replace our loader. And we are going to trade in our loader and have the $20,000 rollover from 2020. So our total expendable funds and our total funds spent on equipment make us whole that year. We balance out. With the program, I want to add, we have 3 years to make the program work after they initially give us some money. So we have 3 years. That's why we're 2 trucks 1 year and 1 truck the next year.
3 years to expend the money.
To expend the money from
So-
from the grant, yes.
Which would work well to us, then we wouldn't have to put all the money up front. We could spend it over a 3-year period. We'd like to stagger the vehicles, so in the replacement cycle, they're staggered as well.
Yeah, so we don't have to have a whole bunch of money to replace everything all at once. Fiscal year 2020, we're asking for the 200,000. That year, we're going to trade in the currently owned 2013 10-wheeler and use that trade-in monies towards purchasing a new 10-wheeler, a new F-550 crew truck with plow equipment, and an asphalt roller. And then 2023, there will be no Volkswagen grant available to us, but we'll have a small rollover from year 2022, and we would like to purchase snow plow equipment for the F-550 purchased in 2022, and an additional F-550 with plow equipment for $126,500, and then 2 additional salt hangers to store our plow equipment on, and we'd like to replace our graffiti machine that year as well.
What is a graffiti machine?
It's basically a tank with a
Spray can.
yeah
Pressure washer.
It's a pressure
Pressure
washer
washer.
with a
Soda, so that it eats the paint up off of the, whatever you spray.
it's a hot seat. Yeah.
Yeah, it uses heat too. Yep.
Ours is right around 25, 30 years old.
So basically, the trucks are older than 2008. Anything older than that are eligible. We have 4 trucks that are available that we can put up. We may only get 3, may only get 2, but we could get as many as 4. And so we're asking for some kind of a ability to say we want to ask for, by the end of November, we have to ask for the money. And then in January, they'll tell us whether the money's available. And then we could use it over a 3-year period of time to try to take advantage. It's going to be over $400,000 probably that we'd be getting from them. That would hurry and make our equipment. We're so far behind in the ages of our equipment, we want to get it on a rotational basis. For example, that $70,000 that we're getting from the truck that we have already is a great value, selling it at 7 years rather than like some of them are 18, 19, 20 years, you're getting very little out of it. So we're trying to rotate and get on a plan to where we can get the vehicles changed out in a timely manner.
This is what it does for your fleet.
Yes,
You've
exactly.
projected.
Yeah, this is what it does, it brings them down to an average of 3.36 years of age. So it's very quickly gets it down to that. And then we can get on a less program as we go along into the future of making sure that our equipment is changed out timely. And we really believe the quicker you change them out, not too quick, but like 7 years, you know, the age of changing out about a 7-year. Although our 550s, we believe we need to change those out faster because they're smaller, get beat up more, we'll change those out more. But like our 10-wheelers, we'll get a higher value. You'll get, in fact, we calculated get 40% back after 7 years. You'll still have 40% of your value. The ones we have now, the bobtails, we're probably lucky if we get 10% out of them at the end of their life. So we feel a quicker rotation and using that money to stimulate and get our fleet into a better condition rather than waiting so long. Plus, we're cutting back on a bobtail. We're going to take a bobtail out and not use it anymore, and we're going to use the 550 so that we can use it year-round, get more use. And the 10-wheeler, we want to get more use. We'll have 2 10-wheelers, and we can plow more with those. And they will be lasting longer because they're much built better. They're bigger. They're a dump truck, 10-wheel dump truck, so we believe the plan's good. So what we're really here today for is to ask you, should we put in for the 4 vehicles? And should we, try to get that money and see what the state will grant to us? And after we apply, they'll bring us back with information, and then we would sign an agreement. We could say no to any of those or whatever, but we think it's a great opportunity to get money. The vehicles are pretty old and ready to be getting rid of. You couldn't trade them out and get the value. We're talking about getting a lot of values for something that doesn't have very much value. So we think it's a great opportunity to bring great value to our fleet. And not just to our trucks, we're looking at like our loader. How old is it, 20 years?
It's a 2002.
2002, so it's older.
Yeah.
Well, now, it doesn't qualify for this program.
No.
But
It
the
enables
program
us-
allows you to use the city's funds for those.
Correct.
Those
That's what
other
we're
things.
saying.
Yeah.
When we went to the budget last time, we talked about having 200,000 a year here and after.
Yeah.
And so that allows us to start replacing other things that have not been replaced. I'm amazed at how many times our loader is not working. It's rusted out, falling to pieces.
How old is it, Randy?
It was
2003.
2003.
2002.
2002. So,
So are any of these 550s going to come in a cherry red, very sewer district-like color?
we generally have been getting them in white lately. We have some red trucks out there.
I have gotten so many photos of that truck asking why Randy's driving around in a new truck.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So
My
ask would be is can we keep them white? Just
well, mine's
neutral?
white.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah.
people see that vehicle in town and they say, why is Randy driving a new truck? And then we have to explain it's the sewer district's truck.
Oh, the one, their one that's red.
Yeah, they're-
It's not just a regular truck that's actually decked out with everything you can get.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
I didn't think you'd go that way, but I just wanted it on the record. That's
Yes.
not Randy's truck.
No. We try to make ours look a little more non-conspicuous, so.
Yeah, a little utilitarian doesn't hurt.
Yes.
So this program from the state is coming out of the Volkswagen settlement, is that what I
Yes,
understand?
exactly, because of the pollutions. And let me tell you, these trucks that we have of that age are terrible. The means of taking the pollution out are worse than anything. They hadn't refined it yet, and they're doing better on their ability to refine and work better. So the motors have never worked very well for us. The trucks really need to be disposed of, and that's one of the things we'll have to do is either prove that they've been destroyed, the engines are destroyed, or we have to send them to a record company and then they get destroyed, but they can't be put back onto the market. We have to destroy them in order to get the money. But we'd sign an agreement, and that's one of the things we'd have to do, is destroy the trucks, so.
So presumably there's 2,500 municipalities in the state that are vying for this money?
There's not that many from the standpoint of the age. Ours are some of the oldest in the fleets, but they're not just the public works, there's buses, there's other types of things. They've set them into different categories, different sizes of vehicles, buses, and so, and it's in certain only places in the state. It's
Yeah,
mainly
only
along
certain
Wasatch
counties.
Front.
Counties along the Wasatch Front are favored heavier because of the pollution in the winter.
Yeah.
Then our likelihood is pretty high on getting the
Yes.
funds if we apply.
Yeah, and I would say even here, we have some of the greater pollution. Up in Brigham City, is Brigham City a part of it?
Yes, Brigham City, North Logan.
But those are not as heavy in pollution, so we are probably more likely to get money, but whether we get all 4 or not, that's the question. But it would be nice to get as much money from them as we can, so.
Sure, it's a windfall.
Yes, it really is. It absolutely is. So that's why we're here, just to ask whether you feel comfortable about allowing us to go ahead and ask for the grant and then see what we come up with, and then we can work through it.
You'd come back at some point with the council being asked to approve an agreement?
Yes.
After they determine who
Yeah, right,
receives the money, they
Right.
have 30 days to accept.
okay.
So Lisa, do we have any restrictions about making, so if I understand that this is only a tentative agreement because we have an out, but do we have
Yeah, you
any-
have to agree to it. Once we put in the application, we could turn it down if we didn't want it, but yes.
Do we have any restrictions about making a multi-year contract?
We can put in we'll have to look at theirs. Sometimes we do a non-funding clause, but on a grant, there's ways that we can make that work.
I don't have any issues with going for the money. The only issue I have is, this is Lisa's lesson to me when I first joined the councils, binding future councils in terms of either through legislation or budgeting processes. So you'd have my support through as long as I'm here, but I that's the only caveat is that council could change within the span of this.
Yeah, one of the things too, you wouldn't be binding yourself to the 200,000 theoretically. We would like to see us get the 200,000 because we can buy down faster. The binding would be just for that truck, for half of the truck each year. I'm sure that, so you understand that, but we would like to include the other things that we're trying to replace during that period of time as well. So we think it's a good plan to look at trying to get the maximum dollars and increase your fleet, improve your fleet, so.
I would also note, and Randy, you and I haven't talked about this, but based on past history, I think it would be justifiable that you wouldn't have to take the $200,000 a year, every year, out of the general fund. You could take some from time to time out of the water fund because these vehicles are used for the water system as well.
Yeah, some
Right. So
could be.
So that
sure,
could
yeah.
relieve some pressure on your general fund.
I don't hear any downside to this.
I don't either. I would make a.
Yeah, I don't see a downside at all.
I would make a motion that we authorize Randy and Mark to move forward on the program and bring in necessary details at the time that they need approval.
To apply, then.
Yeah,
Apply for the
move
funding.
forward and apply.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Do I need a roll call? Can I, on this one, Lisa?
Yes.
Okay, roll call vote. Councilman Ince.
Aye.
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 I think that was 2 on this side. 3.5. Motion passes 3.5.
Thank you.
Motion passes 4-0. So thank you. Thank you, Randy, and thank you, Mark.
I'm not sure who found it, but thank you very much. Is that you, Mark?
No, it was through the Stormwater Coalition, it was Dave Walker.
Tell him thank you.
All right, let's move to item 6. This is Foothills Planning Process Phase 2 report. We have our...
Since this one is going to be a bit longer, could we take like 10 minutes?
Oh, my goodness. I guess it is longer, isn't it? Okay,
There's a lot of material in this one.
Yeah.
We'll take a little break then for 5 to 10 minutes. Thank you.